week long. Luke Jones will be there chronicling all that. Any breaking news happens first on the WNST text service. And, of course, Luke will be at the ballpark as well, where the first-place Baltimore Orioles are taking on the first-place Texas Rangers. I can't think of a more decorated guest to have on the program than a guy who played a lot of baseball at a high level, then became a general manager, and has been a long-time broadcaster and really a legend in Arlington, Texas. He is Tom Grieve from the Rangers play-by-play crew. Welcome to Baltimore, and well, Tom? First place versus first place in August. This is pretty tasty for anyone who loves baseball in the middle of a hot summer, right?
Well, it is. This time of year, the fans are into it. The Orioles have had an excellent season, and the Rangers have had a great season, made some good decisions, and now look at the last couple of months as a chance to go to the postseason. So it's a nice series, and great to see it in a baseball town like Baltimore.
Well, I'll tell you what, you say good decisions, and I know you sat in that chair for a decade making those decisions and agonizing, and you know what it looks like on July 31st when you have some pieces, you have a minor league organization that you don't want to tear apart, you don't want to deal too much away. Assess these deals that the Rangers made over the last couple of days, and certainly the Orioles made some lesser deals because they didn't have the artillery to swing like that, but boy, the Rangers are coming in here different team on Tuesday than they would have been had we played them last Tuesday.
Well, the Rangers have, in my opinion, been a model franchise the last 7 or 8 years. They've built their organization in every possible way, starting with good scouting, good player development, Latin American signings, worldwide signings, and they've built up one of the most potent farm systems in baseball. A lot of those kids from the farm system are with our team right now. Rougned Odor is an all-star caliber second baseman. Nomar Mazara is the youngest position player in baseball. He's been with us almost all season long. Jurickson Profar is only 23 years old, getting a lot of playing time right now. So a lot of our young players are in the big leagues. And the other reason you have a strong farm system is to use as currency to acquire players if you have a chance to win. And the Rangers certainly did that. They did it last year when they acquired Cole Hamels. They traded 5 top prospects. A couple of them have been in Philadelphia's rotation. The position players will be in the big league soon. But that brought Cole Hamels, who, since he's been a Ranger, has been something like 19-3. And also under the radar brought Jake Diekman, one of our really good left-handed relievers. So that was last year. This year, even with those trades, they still had a top 10 farm system, and they used some of their best pieces to acquire some really good players. Jonathan Lucroy upgrades our catching. He's an all-star. And in addition to him, they acquired Jeremy Jeffress, who was 27 for 29 as the closer for Milwaukee. Now, the price was steep, 2 of our very best prospects. And then we acquired Lucas Harrell and Dario Alvarez in a trade for prospects. Lucas Harrell improves the bottom of our rotation, and Dario Alvarez is a really good left-handed arm, much like Jake Diekman. So, we've upgraded our bullpen. We've upgraded our lineup. We also acquired Carlos Beltran for prospects. Prince Fielder's out for the year. Carlos Beltran will be our DH, switch hitter, who will hit in the middle of the lineup and really improve our lineup. And then the other improvement that will come sometime, hopefully within the next week, is Shin-Soo Choo coming back off the disabled list. Choo last year, in the last 2 months of the season, was one of the best players in baseball. He had an on-base percentage of about 45%. So getting him back, along with Lucroy and Beltran, adds 3 all-star caliber players to an already good lineup and makes us a very good team. Doesn't guarantee anything, but I think our players realize that our front office has gone out of its way to give them every possible chance to be a pennant contender and go to the postseason.
We are chatting with longtime baseball man Tom Grieve, who calls games for the Texas Rangers on the play-by-play there, and he is in Baltimore. It is a first-place matchup, and certainly a million different directions we can go in the conversation. But, you mentioned, players realize that the organization's all in, that it's not we're playing for next year, we're playing for pretty good, or we're just playing to get to October, but having winning pieces in October. Again, you sat in that chair many, many years, and I've had the good fortune to write a couple of books on championship teams where the Ravens have won 2 championships here. And in my books, I always go back to the beginning and say, how did this happen? Like what people were involved. Now, obviously in Baltimore, the day Buck came in, and obviously Dan Duquette, who had been banished from baseball for a decade, no one would take the job here, kind of famously. And Dan Duquette and Buck have come in. That's the beginning if the Orioles were to have a parade. I don't know so much on the Rangers side as far as decision makers. There have been different people, different moving parts there as well, different ownership parts there as well. And now there's going to be another stadium down there before it's all over with. For you, if this ends with a parade in Arlington and Fort Worth and Dallas in 12 weeks, what's the turning point for you in making this thing something that the organization's tried for the better part of 50 years to pull off down there?
Well, I think you're right that it's hard to it's hard to pinpoint, and rather than pinpoint, I'll mention a couple of things. I think if you go back far enough, you'll find that it was a significant addition to the franchise when Nolan Ryan was hired to oversee the operation of the ball club, and John Daniels, who was our general manager, brought in a group of baseball operations people. Thad Levine is his right-hand man. A.J. Preller was prevalent in our organization till he became the general manager in San Diego. And they've done it right. They've had the blessing of ownership, the support financially from ownership. They've had a great fan base, which has allowed him to have the revenue to do that. And John has put together a farm system regarded as one of the best in baseball over the last 4 or 5 years. He's used some of the pieces, as I mentioned, to be building blocks for our own team. He's traded some to acquire players, and we've been a contender now for 7 or 8 years. So I think if you look at where we are right now in this latest run, you'd have to cite the hiring of Nolan Ryan and certainly the contribution that John Daniels, our general manager, and his whole organization, from the scouts to the minor league managers to the people that help him analytically at the big league level, evaluation-wise at the big league level, they've done a superb job of basically taking the textbook on how to create a successful organization. They're not the first team to do it. It's not necessarily revolutionary ideas, but I think they've taken the best after analyzing other organizations and how they've become successful, utilized it themselves and done a tremendous job.
Tom, you've been around the game a long time. I mean, you were in Baltimore in the heyday, back coming in, visiting as a visiting player when the Orioles had the incredible teams of the 70s and 80s that I grew up on, and Earl Weaver and all that. You watched the deterioration after Cal Ripken and Peter Angelos's reign of terror here for 15 years. Have you been shocked, literally, over the last 5 years by how good the Orioles are? The winningest franchise in Major League Baseball over the last 5 seasons. A lot of people don't realize that. They haven't gone to the World Series, haven't won, but they've been as consistent as anyone. Tom, it's my 25th year on radio. I had my press pass kind of famously taken away 10 years ago by Angelos for kind of telling the truth when they were in their 9th year of last place. And I remember these summers when the Ravens training camp would open up and the Orioles would be irrelevant. These last 5 years have been kind of miraculous, and I guess part of it's attributed really to Andy McPhail when you go back to the Tillman deal and Adam Jones and what that meant. But it really is about Buck, and Buck's a well-traveled baseball guy, and I know your paths have crossed on many occasions. What he's done here has really been remarkable, and for Machado and Wieters and bringing in Davis and some shrewd moves, and even on Monday, getting a couple of pieces. They didn't have a lot in the farm system, but they got 2 useful Major League pieces that I think will bode well for them over the next 8 weeks. It's been an incredible 5 years here after a long, long stretch of you came in every year. I'm not telling you anything you don't know.
Yeah, you asked if I was shocked, and my first reaction is to say yes, and then my reaction is, if I do say yes, it's an insult to Dan Duquette and Buck Showalter, because these are 2 excellent baseball people, and I'm reluctant to say shocked, but at the same time, I think what you mentioned in the last 5 years, the team with the best record has been the Baltimore Orioles. I think you have to be somewhat surprised, only because as you look around baseball, there's highly touted organizations, most of them very well funded by ownership, And when you look at the Orioles, they're not a team that you say has been funded to the point where they've been able to go out and do anything they've wanted to do. They've had to be shrewd. And I don't think over the last 5 years there's been a shrewder general manager than Dan Duquette, someone who has made sometimes under-the-radar decisions. You look back to when they got J.J. Hardy. No one thought much of that deal. If you're an American leaguer, you didn't know a whole lot about him. And now you watch him kind of be the glue to the infield, one of the best defensive teams in baseball, and J.J. Hardy's been there, and that was a shrewd move. They made some good draft choices. Obviously, Machado is the best example of that. Wieters, two guys that have been the backbone of their young players that have been injected into the lineup. They made kind of an under-the-radar trade when they traded Uehara to the Rangers and got Chris Davis and picked up Darren O'Day, I guess, on a waiver claim. And those two, you wouldn't be where you are right now without those two guys. So, and then you combine that with the hiring of Buck Showalter. So I've mentioned Dan Duquette, I've mentioned Buck, and you mentioned Andy MacPhail, and I think it starts with Andy MacPhail. When you can take Eric Bedard and turn him in to Chris Tillman and Adam Jones, genius comes to mind when you look at the results of that trade. So I think it starts with Andy MacPhail, and over the last few years, Dan Duquette and Buck Showalter have put the icing on the cake. So when you kind of look at the quality of the people who have been making the decisions, I guess it's unfair to say it's a shock, but I think if you're realistic and honest, you have to say yes. When you survey the landscape and see all the highly touted organizations, it is a shock that the Orioles are the team with the best record over the last 5 years, and it's a credit to, you start with the top and you start with the people making the decisions, but it's also a credit to the players who make it happen on the field. And when you play the Orioles, you know that they're not going to give away runs. You know that the Buck's going to handle the bullpen impeccably. And then when you look at the lineup, and you look at Mark Trumbo, that was a nice trade, but I don't think anyone expected him to come here and have the impact that he has and be an all-star. And
well, he was a safety valve, really. I mean, they thought Chris Davis was going to come down and play for you guys or go somewhere else, and he was going to get $200 million in real money, not $161 with $40 million of it deferred. He really was signed to be the replacement for Davis. Wieters was, invited to leave, and they were astonished when he took the offer, right? Because that had really been unprecedented. And it's all kind of worked out, but except for the pitching, right? And I guess that's where I would lead you to say, let's talk about Gallardo a little bit in Jimenez, because when Duquette has spent some of Mr. Angelos' money on pitching, and after all the physicals are done, and you know what I mean, Tom, Gallardo came in with 3 years on the deal, left with 2 years on the deal, and now they're sorry they signed him to some degree, even though he may pitch on Thursday or may go into the weekend in Chicago, but they had to go out into the market and get more pitching when they've spent a lot of money on pitching. And on these trade deadlines, they've given away Arrieta, Davies, Rodriguez on these July 31st deals, and it's been tough to watch. Even the kid that they wound up giving away in the Travis Snyder deal has made a start in Pittsburgh this year. So there's been a lot of pitching that's gone out of the organization that has been major league quality pitching in this hunt for the Holy Grail that the Rangers know all about from Monday in dealing away young talent.
Well, I would just go back to what we've already been talking about. If you micro analyze it, you can look at some deals that haven't worked out. But when you look at the overall picture and you say that the Orioles have had the best record in baseball over the is it baseball or the American League?
Baseball. Major League Baseball.
Best record in baseball over the last 4 years. That's the bottom line. And so when you talk about pitching that's left, pitching that's come, what they need, what they've done, none of those things are significant. It just comes right back to one thing. They've had the best record in baseball for the last 5 years. Bring in Nelly Cruz. Nelly Cruz hit 40 home runs 2 years in a row. They can't keep him. They bring in Mark Trumbo. Mark Trumbo does the same thing. So, whether it's bringing in great defensive players that make the pitching better or offensive players that allow you to outscore the opponents when your pitching is not exactly what you want it to be, the bottom line is no team is perfect. And if the Orioles were impeccable developing pitching and making trades for pitching, they probably would have averaged 105 wins over the last 5 years. So it's just impossible to check all the boxes. But the biggest box of all has been checked, and that is who's had the best team in baseball for the last 5 years. So, Oriole fans are very knowledgeable. I see it every time I come to Baltimore. Our camera guys are intense Oriole fans. They talk baseball. They know the team, and I know their fans are like that. And when that's the case, you talk individual trades, you talk players, and, you can come up with things that you wish were done better. But when you're a proud franchise who's been good for a long time, and you can say, yeah, the Yankees have a $250 million payroll, and the Dodgers spend $40 million on Cuban players, and we're just not able to compete financially with that. But you know what? We've had the best record the last 5 years. It's the ultimate comeback, and the last laugh goes to the Orioles, and it's as easy as said than that for me.
Tom Grieve, a longtime Major League Baseball player, executive, and now longtime broadcaster, Fox Sports Southwest, deep in the heart of Texas in Arlington, where, your crew and Jim Knox, very, very good to us last year. I came out on I did 30 ballparks in 30 days on the tour, and you guys put me on the broadcast to promote saving lives on the bone marrow registry and leukemia, and I'm grateful for that, I must say. Look, man, I went around baseball last year, and I saw all the teams, all the stadiums in that 1 month leading up to the All-Star break. And I don't know that I've ever remember an era, and I'm pushing 50, right? And, my cousin's in the Baseball Hall of Fame, and I followed your career, had your baseball card as a kid, and your son interviewed him at All-Star games and whatnot through the years. I've never seen an era like this, man, where every team, you talk about Odor, and you talk about your young players, and we're Machado and Scope, and everywhere you go, over in Houston, Correa and Altuve, and up in Chicago with Chris Bryant and Addison. I look around, every team has 3 or 4 sort of Yount, Molitor, Whitaker, Trammell, Ripken, Murray kind of thing going on. Even the bad teams like Minnesota have a couple of young players that you sort of know if they're ever going to turn the corner, these guys are going to be a part of it. It's a pretty glorious era for, birthdays that happened in that period right around the turn of the century before that, during that Cal Ripken era, right?
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree with you 100%. I'm a little bit older than you are, but I think we all tend, if someone says, what was the golden era of baseball? We all tend to go back to our childhood because it seemed that way back then. So for me, I was a huge Yankee fan. My dad and my sisters were big Red Sox fans. And so to me, that feels like the glory days of baseball.
So you wanted to be Mantle, not Ted Williams, right? Is that what you're telling me?
Exactly. But
fair enough.
When we used to go to a doubleheader on Sunday, we sat anywhere we wanted. There was 10,000 people there. On Ted Williams' day at Fenway Park, there was 10,000 people there. When Roger Maris hit his 61st home run, there was less than 30,000 people there. Now you go to the ballpark, and there's attendance records being set every year, and I couldn't agree with you more on the young players. If you look at the talent that's come into the game, that's getting ready to come into the game, I think you can make a case very easily, if you're totally objective, that the golden era of baseball started years ago and is right in the middle of becoming the all-time golden age of baseball. When you address it in any way, attendance, young players, TV revenue, however you want to address it, I think you have to look at where we are currently, talent-wise. Every pitcher in every bullpen throws 95 miles an hour. The young guys can hit the ball 450 feet. They're bigger, they're faster, they're more agile.
By the way, do you buy that Chapman throws 105? Palmer laughed at that 2 weeks ago because it looked like they were using him as trade bait, like almost scoffed that someone could throw a baseball 105 miles an hour.
Well, I have to buy it unless they use a different radar gun when he throws the ball. But it doesn't really matter whether he throws the ball 105, 101.
Well, it's
99.
like seeing Usain Bolt or something, right? You're seeing a human being do something that ain't never been done. To quote Smokey and the Bandit,
Well, if they say that Bob Feller threw the ball 97 miles an hour, and Nolan Ryan years later threw the ball 102 miles an hour, when you look at the development and the evolution of the athlete, not the baseball athlete, but the athlete in all sports, the swimming times, the 100-meter times, the mile times, the athleticism of basketball players, what running backs can do. Defensive ends run faster now than halfbacks ran 40 years ago. It stands to reason. I mean, and I guess there's a limit. I don't think 40 years from now someone's going to throw it 125 miles an hour, but it stands to reason that someone might pop up now that throws the ball harder than anyone ever did before. These players today have had the benefit of diet, nutrition, weight training,
science,
normal
just
evolution
science, right?
of the human race. I mean, these guys. You look. Let's just take a couple of players, for instance. You look back when I was playing to the shortstop position, and Mark Belanger was the best defensive player in baseball. I grew up with Mark. He was 4 years older than I was. He's the best basketball player at the time in all of New England, and so we knew what kind of an athlete he was. He was about 6'1" and 165 pounds. And now you look, let's just take the Orioles. Take J.J. Hardy. I'm not exactly sure how big J.J. is, but I'd guess he's probably 6'2" and 190 pounds. He's much bigger and stronger than Mark was, yet he's just as agile and able to make the same plays. You look at Carlos Correa, look at Manny Machado. These kids are bigger, stronger, faster, more powerful, and yet they are still able to do all the things that players could do in the past. And it's not to denigrate the players who came before. If those players grew up today, they'd be the same as these current players, but it was a different era. And, you mentioned your cousin. I had a chance to play against him and as he managed in Venezuela, so I know him very well. And
Aguilas, absolutely.
Exactly. I loved him as a player. But back in that day, that was the type of player who played the middle infield.
And went to the Hall of Fame. You could be 5'9". Exactly. You could be Freddie Patek and go to the Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah. Now look at the Orioles' middle infield. I'm not sure exactly what J.J. Hardy's measurables are.
J.J.'s 6'2", 200 according to Wikipedia, okay, but who are they to trust? So
that's what I would say. Then look at the second baseman. Jonathan Scope.
He's bigger.
Not 5'9" and 160 pounds. He's bigger than J.J. Hardy. Yet when you guys watch them play every day, there's not a play in the world they can't make. That's how athletic they are. And they can each hit the ball 425 feet and hit 25 or 30 home runs. So it's just a different game now. Not better, not worse. It's different. It's evolved. But I think if you're honest about it, when you talk about the golden era of baseball, the golden age of baseball, I think we're living it right now.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, when you came up with the Senators, now that I know a little bit about your background, and by the way, it's been a privilege, great to have you on the show, but had half your family Yankees and half Red Sox. When Ted Williams, your manager, at least half your family thought it was pretty cool, right?
Yeah, they did. For me, growing up, I can remember when I was, 7 or 8 years old, getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, waiting for the delivery boy to bring the Springfield Union newspaper to my door so I could analyze and study the box scores. And I knew the average of every player, and I watched Mickey Mantle first, and I looked at Ted Williams just because I knew my sister would say something about Ted Williams. And so when I became a player and played for Ted Williams, my background as a little baseball junkie was probably the worst thing that could have ever happened to me, because all I could think of is every day I got to the ballpark was, oh man, I get to talk to Ted Williams today, or I'm going to see Ted Williams. And it took me a while just to get over being in awe of being in the big leagues and being around the players, because I collected baseball cards. As long as we're talking.
Well, you and I were the same kid then. My dad's first gift to me was the science of hitting. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. I got you.
I wish I never knew anything about the game. I would have been able to adapt to it better rather than feeling in awe of it. But I'll tell you a quick story since we're in Baltimore. I used to send away for autographed pictures for the players. No self-addressed stamp envelope. My mom would buy me 10 postcards. I think it cost 3 cents to mail the postcard, and I would say to the player, "Dear Bob, please send me an autographed picture." And I sent one time to an Orioles second baseman. I think his name was Marv Breeden. And I got a letter back from him probably 1958, somewhere around there. I got a letter back from him. Dear Tom, my pictures are not ready as yet, but when I get them, I will be sure to send you one. So this guy not only eventually sent me an autographed picture, he sent me a letter telling me that the pictures weren't there so that I wouldn't wonder where the autographed picture was. So, you know, when you look at childhood memories, obviously I was a Mickey Mantle fan and I can remember him winning the Triple Crown. But when it all comes down to it, if someone says, what was one of your best memories, the fact that I got a letter from a major league player telling me he would send me a card when they were ready is right up there at the top. And
well, that creates a lifetime, all the people that you're around, because you're around these kids every day, and the money is mind-boggling for, you know, a kid that just – I mean, it's been a good life for you, man. I was going to say, other than Palmer, I don't know who's had it better than you. I mean, but he was maybe smart enough to stay out of it. I mean, he never went and managed the thing. You know, they want him to be a pitching coach. People here for 30 years now, I've been on the radio, and people are like, when's he going to manage the team finally? And Ripken, some guys have stayed out of it. I mean, you went into it and got out of it, but it's been all of your life. This is what you've done with your life, and it's very, very cool.
You're exactly right. And, you know, my dream as a kid was to be a player and never anticipated staying in the game at the time, but having been able to do that has been icing on the cake and the dream come true. So you're exactly right. The only job that I ever had where I got paid for doing something other than baseball was right after high school. I played in the Cape Cod League, and back then you had to have a job. And I worked for Walter V. Love, who was a painting contractor in Chatham, Massachusetts, and I got paid like maybe $50-$60 a week during that Cape Cod League season. So that's the only job I've ever had.
Did you painted houses during the day and played baseball at night?
Yeah, exactly. He told me when I got there, he said, look, you're going to start out painting the side of houses, and by the time you leave Chatham, you're going to be painting the trim around the windows. And he was exactly right. And so that's been good background. It's served me well over the last 50 years being a homeowner.
Hey, man, really great having you on. I really appreciate you taking a little time out today to visit with us. And, hey, hopefully down the line we'll have plenty to talk about it in a Texas-Baltimore matchup somewhere in October between here and Arlington, right?
Sounds great. Hope we can do that.
Wouldn't be shocked. There he is, Tom Grieve, longtime Texas Ranger, as a player, as an executive, and now in his 21st year as a broadcaster at Fox Sports Southwest. You can follow them out. For those of you on the Major League Baseball package, you get Tom into your living room on channel 790, I don't know which one, 780 something in my system anyway. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear from wherever you are. Don't forget, our partner, Brian Billick, on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation, will be joining us next Tuesday night at Greenmount Station in Hampstead. Crab cakes, beer, football conversation, summer talk, boating talk, probably a little bit of New England boating around there talk, because I know that's what Brian did this summer, so we'll get a little bit of that in. Head coach Brian Billick, our World Championship partner at WNST, on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation, Greenmount Station, Tuesday night in Hampstead, Carroll County. We'll see you out there right around 7 o'clock. I am Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.